Have you ever wondered how professional hackers really break into a company? You can forget that Hollywood image of some guy in a hoodie just frantically typing code. A real professional breach, it doesn't start with a keystroke. It starts with a blueprint. And today, we're going to walk through that blueprint together. And this is it. It's called the penetration testing lifecycle. You can think of this as the master plan. It's a methodical, step-by-step process that guides the entire operation, making sure that from the initial conversation to the final report, absolutely nothing is left to chance. Now, this lifecycle has a few different phases, but for our purposes, we are going to zero in on the first two. The ones that happen way before any real attack is even attempted. Reconnaissance and vulnerability identification. This is the intelligence gathering stage, and honestly, this is where the entire game is either won or lost. So before a single packet is ever sent across the network, you have what's called the pre-engagement phase. This is basically the professional handshake. It's where the testers and the client sit down and define the rules of the game. What are the goals? What's the scope? And super importantly, what are the legal boundaries? Are we testing every single thing, or maybe just one web application? Are some systems totally off limits? This stage really sets the foundation for everything else that's about to happen. When it comes to gathering intelligence, testers really use two main approaches. First up, you've got passive reconnaissance. This is pure observation. Think of it like a detective watching a building from across the street. You never actually touch or interact with the target's network at all. And then, on the flip side, you have active reconnaissance. This is where you get a little closer. You walk right up to the building and you start knocking on doors, sending probes to their systems to see who answers and how they respond. So let's start with that stealthy approach first. This is phase one of our digital investigation, gathering intel from the shadows, using something called open source intelligence, or OSINT for short. It's all about finding out what the target is unknowingly broadcasting to the entire world. OSINT is really the art of turning publicly available information into a huge strategic advantage. We're talking about stuff from search engines, public records, social media, you name it, anything that's really out there. And it is absolutely amazing what companies accidentally reveal about their technology, their people, and their digital footprint. The goal here is to build a complete profile of the target without them ever knowing you were even looking. This quote just perfectly captures the entire mindset. A simple tool like Google Search becomes this incredibly powerful weapon for hunting down digital breadcrumbs. Things like sensitive files, forgotten login pages, or internal info that just got accidentally indexed and made public. It all kicks off with a technique that people call Google dorking. It's basically just using Google's own advanced search commands to find things that aren't really meant to be found. And the most basic one is cite. By typing site-specific-target.com, you're just telling Google, hey, I only want to see results from this one specific website. It's simple, but it's the foundation for everything. Okay, so from there, we can start building on it. By adding the final type, PDF command, we're now asking Google to show us only the PDF files on that target's website. And you would be shocked how often sensitive internal reports, financial documents, or even network diagrams end up indexed and just sitting there, totally accessible to the public. And to get even more surgical, we can use a command like inurl-admin. This tells Google to look for pages that have the word admin right there in the web address. It's a classic trick, and it's fantastic for finding hidden login portals that aren't linked anywhere on the main site, but are still visible to Google's little web crawlers. All right, so if Google maps the websites of the internet, a tool called Shodan maps its backbone. It's often called the search engine for hackers, but really, it's a search engine for devices. It crawls the internet looking for anything and everything that's connected, servers, webcams, traffic lights, you name it, and it grabs all the information they send back. So what kind of stuff can you find with this? Well, you can find a company's routers and their servers, and you can even pinpoint their physical location. You can identify the specific services they're running, like voice over IP phone systems. But maybe most importantly, you can often find the exact version of the software running on a device, which, believe me, is an absolute goldmine for finding known vulnerabilities. Now, beyond search engines, testers will dig into a company's domain infrastructure. A Whois lookup, for example, tells you who actually owns the domain. Then you have tools like NSLookup and Dig, which query the domain name system. That's kind of like the internet's phone book, to find the IP addresses of their servers. Other tools can even tell you who handles their email. Every single answer adds another piece to the puzzle of our target profile. All right, so we've been listening from the shadows up until now. It's time to shift gears. We're moving from that quiet, passive observation to active probing. This is the part where we start knocking on the digital doors and directly interacting with the target systems, just to see how they react.
And the absolute go-to tool for this job is Nmap, which stands for Network Mapper. It is the de facto standard for exploring a network. By sending out these specially crafted packets, Nmap can figure out what devices are on the network, what ports are open, what services are running on those ports, and even what operating system they're using. It's like creating a detailed architectural blueprint of their entire digital house. Now, a good tester doesn't just run one scan and call it a day. It's a methodical process. As you see here, they're building a picture. They might start by just checking a common web port, like port 80. If that's open, okay, great. Next, they'll try to identify the operating system. But the really crucial step is trying to find the exact software version running on that port. And finally, they might use something like a stealth scan to try and gather all of this info without setting off any alarm bells. So we've gathered all this passive and active intelligence. We now have like a mountain of data. The next phase is all about turning that raw data into a strategic map of potential weaknesses. This is where all that information finally becomes actionable. Exactly. So you've got this long list of open ports, software versions, weird indexed files. Now what? What do you actually do with all of it? This question marks the pivot point where we move from reconnaissance into the vulnerability assessment phase. So, the whole goal of the vulnerability assessment is to connect the dots. You take every single piece of information you gathered during recon and you cross-reference it against known security flaws, common misconfigurations, and potential attack vectors. It's really all about finding the chinks in the armor. And this is where it all comes together. That internal PDF you found with a simple Google search, well, that's potential data leak. That old Kamalio server you found on Shodan, turns out it has a known denial of service exploit. And that ancient version of Apache you found with an Nmap scan, yep, there are public exploits all over the internet for that. You see, every piece of intel is mapped directly to a potential risk. But here's the thing, not all vulnerabilities are created equal. A true professional doesn't just find a bunch of flaws, they prioritize them. They start asking questions like, what are the most valuable assets to this business? Where's the high-value data? The customer lists, the employee info, and which of these threats, like an exposed port on a critical server, poses the biggest and most immediate risk to those assets? So, at the end of the day, the output of all this work, the OSINT, the scanning, the analysis, is a strategic roadmap. It's a prioritized list of the weakest points and the most valuable targets, and it tells the penetration tester exactly where to focus their efforts in the next phase, exploitation. And all of this brings us to a final thought. It's easy to think of this as something that only applies to big corporations, but the same techniques used to map a company can be used to map an individual. Every public profile, every photo you're tagged in, every connected device in your home, it all tells a story. So, what story is your digital footprint